Many people know this about me already, but my favorite character in Umamusume is Fuji Kiseki. I like her for many reasons, some of which I have bullet pointed here. When I was new to the game, I just liked her design, and I wound up going to pity for her because of that design, and when I played her first career, I just fell in love with how great her personality is and how heartfelt her story is. I didn't see the movie until later, but of course, watching the movie, she completely stole the show. But Fuji is not meta. She's never going to be meta because she doesn't have any niche where she really shines over other horses. Her best bet is usually just taking advantage of her aptitudes, where she can get to a sprint aptitude pretty easily, and she does have a gold mile skill in her kit. Now, this is kind of frustrating to me, but it's not the end of the story. As Fuji says herself, there are no what-ifs in a race. There is no wringing my hands about her not having an acceleration. There is no point in mourning her subpar base kit. She still has to play with the hands that she is dealt, and I still have to help her do that. And I have. So this is my history of all of my champion meetings since Fuji has released. I have used her in every single champion meeting. I used her as a late in CM3, I used her as a pace in CM4 and 5, I used her as a lucky pace in CM6, I used her as a front in CM7, I used her as a lucky pace in CM8, and then I used her as a pace in CM9 and 10. And I did try to give her the opportunity to win in all of them. I didn't want to just make her like a complete brick for my team. I wanted her to at least be able to hold her own and get a respectable win rate. I like to think that I've managed that. I'm not a solo Oshi player. I am more of a holistic team comp player where I try to use my Oshi in all of my teams, but I really want the team to work together and win with multiple different aces. So I had different strategies for all of these CMs, and if you are curious about any specific one or my team comp in any specific one, I'm happy to talk about it in the comments if you wanted to leave a comment about it. But this is kind of my history of using Fuji in every single CM, even though she is not really a great horse. So this is going to be a guide about how to make your favorite character win, how to incorporate your favorite character into your team comp for every single CM, and how to succeed with them despite maybe there not being meta. The first step is that you need to be able to understand their kit. Their uniques, their potentials, their aptitudes, you need to understand it, you need to know how to work with it. The second step is to understand the race course that you're operating under. You need to understand what accelerations are good in the race course. You need to understand how the meta is going to shape up for the race course. You need to predict what other players are going to run so that you can utilize your team to best suit your favorite character. And then you need to be able to build that team around them. You need to be able to build a team that has synergy, and synergy matters more when you're using non-meta characters than it does when you're using meta characters. When you're using meta characters, sometimes you can just throw in a bunch of characters and they will just, their own kits are so strong that they can just win regardless of what the rest of your team looks like. But if you are using a character that is not meta, you need to put everything you can into this character, which means that you need to build synergy and you need to consciously think about what your entire team is trying to accomplish. So first step is understanding their unique. You need to know what their proc requirements are. You need to look them up on Game Torah, look at these activation conditions, and understand exactly what these proc requirements are. You need to think, how can I get this unique to proc? How can I make this work? Because uniques are very strong, and they can be game-changing if they hit in the right spot or under the right circumstances. So using your team building to proc your character's unique is very crucial. So you use your team comps, you use different positions, and you use your meta knowledge to be able to force their unique to proc at a time that is most advantageous to you. So I'm going to give some examples of this. The first example is Fuji and Red Teo. So I used Fuji and Red Teo together in CM5. They were both pace chases in the CM. Because CM5 was a mile CM and Fuji has a gold mid-race mile skill, I was able to build so that Fuji was usually ahead of Teo in the final spurt. So Fuji's unique is going to proc if there is another Uma in a cone shape behind her. So she is looking for Umas behind her, maybe a little bit next to her, and if there is one, and if they're in that spot for like about a second, her unique will proc and she will get velocity increase. Red Teo's unique will proc in a similar spot on the track, and it's going to proc if she has an overtake target for about 2 seconds. So Teo's unique is going to proc when she is behind an Uma. So what this means is that Fuji uses that gold skill, she maybe uses a higher wit or a little bit stronger mid-race, so that she's always ahead of Teo coming into the late race. Teo sees her as the overtake target and attempts to overtake her, which procs Teo's unique. Teo being behind her procs Fuji's unique, and then they both get a 0.45 at the final stretch. So using these two Umas together, both as pace chasers, both where I'm trying to control their positioning, makes them both very, very strong in that final stretch. And this is how I was able to manage getting a high win rate in CM5 without using Umas like Taiki Shuttle. Second example here is Cafe and Armor Fuku Kitaru. I used Cafe and Armor Fuku both as lates in CM8. Lates were not meta in CM8. CM8 was all ends and some fronts, and so I was at kind of a disadvantage, but I really wanted to run them both as lates. So what I did in CM8 was I gave Armor Fuku groundwork, Uma stun, a little bit of mid-race, and she did have naturally higher within my Cafe. And this allowed Armor Fuku to push up a little bit more in the mid-race, which meant that Cafe is always behind her. Now, Armor Fuku's unique is a long-term unique that procs over a long distance that starts procking at about the 50% range. It can proc from 4th place, which means that she's not just shooting completely dead in the water if she is pushed up by too many end closers, so she can't trigger moving past and beyond or let's pump some iron. But it procs when somebody has her as an overtake target for 2 seconds. So because Fuku has groundwork, she's always going to be ahead of Cafe. Cafe, as another late, is always going to be behind Fuku, which means that mid-race, Cafe's unique will proc 50%. Cafe is going to start pushing up. And as Cafe pushes up, Fuku becomes her overtake target. And when Fuku becomes her overtake target, Fuku procs her own unique and additionally pushes up. So this helps my double late and 1 pace comp in CM6, which was very not meta. Have a 60% win rate without being able to use straightaway spurt, without being able to oftentimes hit no stopping me because all of the Umas in the lobby were end closers. So moving on, the next step of understanding their kit is understanding their aptitudes. So the best way to do this is to be able to prepare parents and legacies for aptitude fixing. Now, Fuji is in a very good spot here because she is a very flexible Uma when it comes to aptitudes. I like to call Fuji a jack of all trades, master of none kind of Uma. So Fuji can move into any distance with sparks alone. She can move into front or late with sparks, and she is naturally a pace. For your favorite Uma, maybe this looks a little bit different, but the basic of it is when you know what positions are generally going to be meta, and of course you know what the length of tracks are in the future, you are able to prepare parents in advance to fix your aptitudes. So on my account, I have several parents for Fuji that are, for example, a medium spark parent that has 4 front sparks in their grandparents. So this means that I can use this Uma to push Fuji's front aptitude to A while still giving her a distance aptitude parent, which also pushes her medium aptitude to A. So being able to have these parents or legacies for aptitude fixing is really helpful. This is the kind of thing that you can really do ahead of time if you're thinking about what is my favorite Uma, what aptitudes do they need, what are some meta positions in general, such as front runners or end closers, and can I pre-prepare my account to get parents or legacies for them that can help their aptitudes when it comes time to start building for CMs. Now we're looking at our potentials. So when we look at our potentials, we want to understand what are our Uma's strengths, what are our Uma's weaknesses. So for example, Fuji here has big sisterly and mile corners and shifting gears. Those are all mile skills. And then she has race planner, which is a pace only gold recovery. She obviously doesn't need her gold recovery in mile, but this means that she can run in mediums or longs without needing to inherit a gold recovery. So I would say that Fuji has a strength of being very flexible, right? But she has a weakness of having absolutely no skills that are applicable in a short medium race. If she doesn't need race planner, she doesn't have any potentials that she's going to be using in a medium race. She also has nothing for sprints. When you're looking at your potentials here, you want to think about what cards can I use to shore up my missing skills. So a long pace Fuji doesn't need swinging maestro, so I don't have to use Super Creek for my long pace Fuji. Another example is that mile late vodka doesn't need on your left because she already has Furious Feet in her kit, which works in miles and lasts even longer than on your left does. So she doesn't have to use SP to get on your left. She could instead use her SP to either help her close out the end of the race or use a failsafe just in case she's ahead of the 6th position, so she's not drawing totally dead if she's 5th in the late race or 4th in the late race. If she is 4th and maybe she hits no stopping me off of a front, then she can still have a win condition. Whereas if she has both on your left and Furious Feet and she hits 4th by the end of the race, there's nothing she can do. The next thing to think about when you're looking at a Uma's kit is their growth rates. So oftentimes your favorite Uma is not going to have the perfect growth. She's not going to have the 20 speed, 10 stamina, or 20 speed, 10 power, or whatever it is. You can still work with suboptimal growths here, especially using different sparks and different deck building. So I do see a lot of pushback against, for example, speed sparks. And I do think that a lot of this is coming from using speed growth Umas, because I can personally say from experience that speed sparks can enable me to run 2 speed cards decks on Fuji, who has a 0 speed growth, and still be able to cap speed. You can play around more with sparks and deck building to suit your Uma's needs, but I will say that not having a speed growth does mean that you have to really think about how you're getting that speed stat. Whether you're going to be running 3 speed cards, or whether you're going to try to be high rolling with 2 speed cards, or whether you're trying to supplement speed through wit cards. It's always a consideration. Additionally, sparks, I think, are better used to shore up a weakness rather than to augment a strength. So, for example, Manhattan Cafe has a 30% stamina growth, and when I started using her, I had a lot of stamina spark legacies, so I was using a lot of stamina sparks on her. But that was a really inefficient use of sparks for me, because when Manhattan Cafe is inheriting sparks, she's inheriting a flat number, right? She's not actually using her 30% growth to increase the value of these sparks. So what would be a better solution for me using Manhattan Cafe would be to use speed sparks or power sparks or even wit sparks, and then train her stamina normally in her career where she actually benefits from that 30% growth. And then know your secret events. Go to your favorite Uma's Game Torah page, look at their secret events, and see how you can activate them. It doesn't work in the next scenario, so this is more of a keep this in your pocket and use it next time secret events are going to be a thing. But there's been so many times that I have started training a new Uma and just not checked their secret events, and then made an ace, and then like I'll post the ace, I'll be look at this amazing Uma, and then my friends will be like, did you do the secret event? And I'm like, what secret event? So always check your secret events. Obviously, it's not applicable in Trackblazer because there are no secret events in Trackblazer, but in the future, when we're out of the next scenario, think about secret events. Do secret events. So now that we have really analyzed our favorite character, we are going to move on to analyzing the race course that we are building this character for. So for every CM, every race course is going to be a little bit different, and there's a couple things that we need to internalize when we are looking at these race courses and when we are preparing to run on these race courses. The first thing is where to excel. How are players going to reliably accelerate at the right time on this race course? And if you haven't watched my acceleration guide, I would highly recommend watching it. It's going to be very helpful for understanding exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about accelerating, where we're accelerating, why we're accelerating there, and why acceleration is so important. So we want to know how to reliably excel at the right time. We want to know what skills are going to accelerate our Umas when we want them to accelerate. And we want to know what styles have those skills. So for example, angling and scheming is a powerful acceleration that activates from first place, which means that usually and only a front runner would have access to it. So if we're looking at a race where angling and scheming is arguably one of the best options for accelerations, we're going to think for a couple things. We're going to think, what styles can access this acceleration? The answer to that is usually a front. Can my favorite character run in that style? Can Fuji Kiseki run as a frontrunner? She can. Can she inherit angling and scheming? She can. Her affinity with Saiyan Sky is very bad though. And can I use my team to position her so that she can hit this acceleration? Can I use the rest of my team to help Fuji Kiseki hit angling and scheming as we are going into the late race? I can, because I can use another front to help push her up so that they can compete for first place. And I can use, maybe if this is a mile track, I can use an end closer with Keen Eye to drag all of the other Umas back. I can use Speed Eater on both of my fronts to also push Umas back. So there are ways that you can try to position your Uma in that position. Another example is Let's Pump Some Iron. Right? Can your Uma run in a late or end position? Can she inherit Let's Pump Some Iron? Can you use your team to help position her? If she is a late, can you use front runners to help position her? Because you don't want to run end closers, or else you might push your Uma out of the 6th place position. So these are all things that you want to be thinking about once you understand what accelerations are going to work best on the race course. So your next step here is understanding the meta. You have to think, what is everyone else going to be running? You have to be predictive. You have to think about what kind of rooms you're going to run into when you're in the actual CM. And the answer is that it's usually a combination of what is strong and what is easy. A lot of people will say that room matches are not indicative of the actual CM meta, and this is true. But room matches will tell you what the higher end of the CM meta is going to look like. It's going to tell you what people are running to be able to gauge your strength against. And then people are also overwhelmingly going to be running what is easy, which I consider to be common sense or free Umas. People are not, on the whole, going to be adjusting aptitudes very much, whether that's style aptitudes or distance aptitudes. The player base as a whole doesn't usually manipulate these aptitudes very much. So you're going to see a combination of both the high end and the path of least resistance in real lobbies. And so you want to try to think about this, right? So something that I see a lot in the kind of sweatier Uma circles is that people tend to over-prepare based off of room matches. What I mean by this is that people tend to take what they see in room matches as law for what they're going to see in the CM and build a team designed to beat these room matches. And this isn't always going to work out for you because you will still get a lot of players who can build decent Umas that are also still the path of least resistance. So you're still going to see a lot of late surgers and end closers in round 2 of a race course that has a late race corner where both angling and scheming and Let's Pump Some Iron is going to work. Yes, Let's Pump Some Iron is going to be more RNG and it's going to be less sure that you're going to hit it, but you're still going to see a lot of players that are hitting it. So you need to think about this in the sense of, I don't need to beat every single room match, but I need to be able to play into them with strength, right? I need to have a win condition into these room matches, but I also need to have a win condition into the path of least resistance. An example here is how I, in CM10, built a team with a runaway silent Suzuka, a pace chaser no stopping me Fuji Kiseki, and a keen eye end closer Haru Urara. My runaway in room matches is often countered by other runaways, and my Fuji in room matches can use the dead runaways and also the myriad of fronts that are in room matches to hit no stopping me and win. So I know that in a room with heavy fronts, which is going to be kind of like the stronger rooms, my Fuji can win through a no stopping me win con. But in a room with fewer or no fronts, my Suzuka is built so that she can still take that angling and scheming proc and still win. So I have kind of a double insulation versus both the strong room match meta and the path of least resistance, which is going to be pace, lates, and ends. So let's be anti-meta. How can we be anti-meta? Couple of really important things here. You need to firstly take advantage of the meta. You need to be able to predict strong positions. This goes back to understanding which accelerations are good, right? When there are certain accelerations that work better than other accelerations, you are going to be able to predict which positions you're going to see because those are the positions using those accelerations. When you know those positions, when you know those accels, you can outplay those accels. You outplay those accels by position denial through team building. You outplay those accels by forcing your own Umas to hit those accels, forcing your own win conditions. How do you outplay accels? You use your entire team. You don't just throw 3 random Umas out there and call it good enough. You want to be able to use your entire team to outplay the meta. So fronts are some of the strongest positions at outplaying meta because they can both stretch out the lobby and they can deny acceleration slots. So for example, in CM10, position 1 is very strong because of angling and scheming. Positions 1 and 2 are strong because of Victoria por plancha. So by using 2 fronts in CM10, what you're doing is you are denying every single pace El Condor Pasa from using Victoria por plancha. And by doing this, you are basically eliminating all of the threats of all of the trainers who didn't put in the, quote unquote work to make their pasa a front. Fronts will also stretch out the lobby. So if you have 1 runaway, or if you have 2 good fronts, they are going to extend the lobby, which will mean that more mid-race and more wit is going to matter. We saw in CM9 how if there's no front, or if there's only 1 front, or if the fronts are not very good, your pace chaser will get paced down like crazy, right? You're going to hit that pace down mode, and they're going to intentionally slow themselves down. If we have capable fronts, then our pace chasers are not going to get paced down. They're not going to be punished for being good, right? So if we're running a pace chaser and we want this pace chaser to be very, very strong, and we want to build them with a lot of mid-race, we want to build them maybe with groundwork so they can push ahead of the pace pack, then we want to also have a very strong front to go with them so that our front can help extend the lobby and let that pace chaser reach their maximum potential. So that whole strategy is kind of the chariot strategy. It's using a front to make your more invested pace or late or even end to move further up in during the mid-race. Fronts can also be used as no stopping me targets. It's a little bit sketchy sometimes, it doesn't always hit, but it's always an option to use on your fronts. If my Suzuka meets another Suzuka and they both gas out, they both lose their win con, right? But both of these slow-moving Suzukas can be no stopping me targets for my Fuji Kiseki, who is just behind them as a pace chaser. End closers. So end closers are going to be able to proc behind skills and to deny late acceleration slots to other end closers and to late surgers. So end closers are going to want to look at 6th or below skills. So in a mile CM, this will be less skills like Keen Eye or Furious Feet. End closers can also take Let's Pump Some Iron in an end heavy meta, or even not in an end heavy meta if you have enough mid race for them to push up to 6th by the late race. Paces and lates are not going to be as reliable as fronts or ends when it comes to position denial, right? They're not going to be able to deny as many acceleration positions to ends or fronts. If you're trying to counter a Taiki shuttle, you are trying to take the 3rd and 4th slots. When you're running 3 fronts, a triple front comp, you can guarantee that you're going to at least be taking one of those Excel slots away from Taiki, right? She can still hit it from 4th, but you can at least take 3rd, right? If you're running paces and lates, this gets a little bit trickier because you are a little bit more beholden to the number of fronts in your lobby and the number of paces in your lobby and how your paces will stack up against the other paces, right? So if you are in a 3 front, 3 pace lobby and you are up against 2 pace Taiki shuttles, right? Your pace needs to be ahead of those 2 pace Taiki shuttles in order to shut off their uniques, which means that your pace has to be the best built pace in the entire lobby. But if there's only 1 front and 2 Taiki shuttles, your pace actually wants to be worse than one of them so that you can force one of those Taiki shuttles into 2nd, your pace takes 3rd, and then unfortunately the other Taiki shuttle is going to take 4th. Just kind of how the game works. You see that you still can use position denial in your paces and lates, it's just not going to be as effective. In a similar vein, your lates can be taking moving past and beyond or Let's Pump Some Iron slots. One of the ramifications of me running 2 lates in CM8 was that I could be in 7th and 6th and I would have a win con. I could be in 6th and 5th and I would have 2 win cons. I could be in 5th and 4th and have a win con, right? So if you're running 2 Umas in that pace slot or 2 Umas in that late slot, yes, they do have overlapping win conditions, which isn't ideal, but you have a slightly higher chance of hitting that win condition. So, you know. Paces and lates can also work well with overtake uniques because they are going to be overtaking throughout the entire race if they have other Umas in their position that they're constantly trading places with. A lot of other players will also be running paces and lates because paces and lates tend to be the path of least resistance for most players. They are generally considered to be easier to run because they don't have to inherit straightaway spurt and they don't have to inherit groundwork and they don't have to worry about all of the frontrunner things. They're usually, the people consider them easy to run, and so there are quite a few of them. You can also use groundwork or Umastan on your pace or late to push them into the head of their position, and sometimes push them into the, if you have a late, push them into the pace pack ahead of them. If you have a pace, push them into the frontrunner pack ahead of them. Now, can be a little bit dangerous because you can still get pace down, but this is why I recommend running this kind of strategy with capable frontrunners who can extend that lobby so that you don't get paced down. So the truth is, these strategies are not meta for a reason. You are going to be working harder to make this strategy work, and your win rate might be a little bit lower than usual. I've noticed that in CMs where I can incorporate Fuji into a very meta comp, such as me being able to run her in the 3rd front slot in CM7, or me being able to run her in the pace slot in CM4, my win rate is about 5 to 10% higher overall than it is in metas where I have to kind of invent an entirely new team comp around her. So you will see kind of a lower win rate if you are really working against the meta. And this can be really frustrating, and you can maybe feel more frustrated than usual if you're running into endless rooms of, you know, Taiki's, Falcons, Christmas Ogres, you know, you're just sick of it, right? So it can be frustrating, and I'm not saying that this is how you will win 100% of the time. I'm saying this is how you can take your favorite Uma and enjoy the time that you spend with them and see them still win matches, but understand that it's not going to be as effective as just copy-pasting a meta comp. However, if you play to her strengths, if you understand what she's capable of, if you build a team around her, if you understand the race course, if you understand accelerations, if you create these legacies, if you work to train her, if you do all of these things together, then I promise she can give you a miracle. This is actually perfect. Taiki is 2nd and 5th. Fuji, hold 3rd. Hold 3rd, Fuji. Anything scheming? Fuji NSMs. Fuji NSMs. Oh no, Taiki NSMs! And Taiki hits unique. Oh, come on! Come on! Fuji, can you still get it? Can you still get it? Is she still running faster? Is she still? Oh my god, she hit head on and got blocked into Suzuka, and then she was just like, no.